Let me give you a little bit of a background of Meridian Port Services before I introduce the main topic. I believe the topic for discussion today is transforming the nature of doing business in the ports of Ghana, with a case study on Tema and its port expansion project, as well as the paperless port system and all these recent developments within the port industry in Tema. Meridian Port Services Limited is a joint venture between a company called Meridian Port Holdings and Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. That is the Port Authority of Ghana. Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority is a significant shareholder in Meridian Port Services, holding 30% of the shares of Meridian Port Services, and Meridian Port Holdings holding 70%. As the name implies, Meridian Port Holdings is a holding company which holds the shares of AP Mola Terminals and Bolloré Logistics Africa. Now, Bolloré and APM Terminal have equal shares in Meridian Port Holdings, which means that effectively APM Terminals has 35%, Bolloré has 35%, and Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority 30%. Now, how did this come about? You know, sometime in the early 2000s, the Gateway Project, the Ghana Gateway Project was hatched. The idea was to open up the port for private participation. So after, you know, a competitive bidding process, Meridian Port Service Limited was granted a concession to build, operate, and transfer a containerized cargo facility for a period of 20 years. So it was given a concession for a period of 20 years, commencing April 2007. So in 2007, Meridian Port Services commenced its business of containerized cargo in Tema. Meridian Port Services Limited strictly deals with containerized cargo and nothing else. You know, in the port we have bulk cargo, we have oil and gas, we have ro-ro vessels, that is the car carriers and all that. But we as Meridian Port Services Limited are specialized in only one area of endeavor, that is containerized cargo. Now, there are about 18 berths within the port of Tema, but we are concentrated on 2 berths. And it is on these 2 berths that we have transformed the nature of doing business in the ports of Ghana. We started with, for those of you who may know the maritime industry, we started with 2 ship-to-shore cranes on a key length of 576 meters. So we have a key length of 576 meters, and we can accommodate 2 vessels at a time. So we started with 2 ship-to-shore cranes, and then reach stackers, about 16, that is the top loader machines for the yard. Then we added some more mobile harbor cranes, and we geared up, and currently we have about 5 ship-to-shore cranes and 8 rubber tie gantry cranes, as well as 5 mobile harbor cranes. What does this mean? What it means is that within a quay wall facility of about 576 meters, we have 10 waterfront cranes. So we've maximized the efficiency of, or the utilization of this 576 meters of quay wall. We have another about 64 hectares or 64 acres of land storage space for containers. And we've actually also maximized the utilization of these this year to the extent that we have a 92% year-to-date utilization. What does it mean for doing business? What it means is that if you do not plan ahead, it will come to a stage where you would be choked because you have reached maximum capacity and you cannot expand. It is within this context that the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority decided to hatch the Tema Port Expansion Project. It came out with a master plan. The master plan is for about 20 berths But Meridian Port Services Limited said, look, we'll buy into this good plan and build a cornerstone for the expansion of the port of Tema. So we got into negotiations and got a facility of about $1.5 billion from an IFC syndicated loan, you know, and it's not all the loan that came from the IFC. $667 million came from IFC, and then the shareholders brought in equity to support. So somebody might ask later, how much is the port expansion project worth? It's worth $1.5 billion. Now, what is it all about? And why should we expand the port? As I indicated, we are about 92% of capacity utilization. Now, moving forward, vessels are growing bigger. The biggest vessels that come to West Africa currently are the West African maximum ships, which are called the WAFMAX vessel. And the WAFMAX vessels carry about, the containers are measured in 20 footers or 20 equivalent units. They carry a maximum of about 5,000 20-footer containers. And these vessels are not seen as the new generation vessels. The new generation vessels, you know, as the post-Panamax, the Panamax vessels, you know, carry about 10,000 or more containers. And this gives way for economies of scale. And if you do not take advantage of the economies of scale, then you might be adding costs to the business that you operate in your country. Why do we say so? The big vessels actually go to the big ports. They offload the cargo bound for the smaller ports. That's the ports that do not have the capacity to accommodate the big vessels. And in offloading, you cannot offload from one vessel directly onto another vessel. So what it then means is that you offload, the ship comes into the port, it pays anchorage charges, you come into the port, you have crew waiting, you offload these containers using the equipment in the port onto trucks. The waterfront, the trucks move from the waterfront to the yard. The yard equipment then offload these containers from the trucks into the yard. The containers are stored in the yard, and then the big vessels leave, and then the small vessels come, and the reverse process is done for the small vessel to bring the cargo to ports that do not have the capacity to accommodate the vessel. This means that you're adding up a lot of costs, and this this multiple handling thing would cost you between $150 to about $200+ for the multiple handling of this cargo. Cut out this cost and multiply it by the number of containers that come to the port of Tema. We have an estimate of about 1 million containers per annum. So if you cut out $200 on the average, or $180 on the average, you're saving $180 million to the importer of container or containerized cargo, and the exporters of containerized cargo. You know, you're cutting out that cost from their cost of doing business. You're also reducing the pressure on the banks for forex, and this would be a good thing for our currency. You would be stabilizing our currency. So it is within this context that the Tema Port Expansion Project was actually birthed. Okay. Now, what is this Tema Port Expansion Project all about? It entails, one, reclaiming the equivalent of 127 hectares of land from the sea. You're building, if I break it, we have the main works, we have the land works, and we have the building works. The marine works comprises the reclamation of 127 hectares of land from the sea. The building of a 3.55-kilometer breakwater, dredging an access channel up to about 18 meters deep to accommodate 16-meter draft vessels. Then you build the quay wall of about 1,400 meters to accommodate 4 berths. This is the cornerstone of the Tema Port Expansion Project. Then you have the land works. The land works, after the area has been reclaimed, you have fiber optics, you have electricity all connected, all service lines connected, and the area compacted and paved. Then you have the building works, the gates, the offices, and all that. And this is what the Tema Port Expansion Project is all about. Now we can go ahead with this from this intro to answer the questions that you would pose.
Excellent. Thank you very much for this introduction. And welcome to Business Links Africa. Today, as promised, we have with us Mr. Ebo Brown from Tema Ports and Harbours.
Meridian Port Services.
Meridian Port Services, where we'll be discussing issues happening in our new harbour. Thank you so much, Mr. Brown, for the introduction, and thanks for your time as well.
Thank you.
Through the introduction, I was listening to, and one area that caught my eye, which I'd like you to reiterate on it, is the size of the vessels coming, because that would show the reason for the expansion, or that's the core area for the expansion. So currently, what size, because from what you've just explained, it means that we've got different size vessels that can come into the ports, and depending on the size that comes in, if it's the medium to large or large vessels, then you're saving on cost. But if it's a small vessel, then it means that you are actually cost twice to import or to ship items into our ports. So currently, what size vessels are we able to accommodate in Tema Port?
Thank you for the question, Theodore. The biggest vessels that we can accommodate are the West African maximum vessels. That's the WAFMAX vessel. And we have a draft. The current draft of the Port of Tema, maximum draft, that is the depth, is about 11.5 meters. So even with these West Africa maximum vessels, or the WAFMAX vessels as we call them for short, they sometimes have to light up in other countries like Togo before coming in. And this is not very good for doing business in Ghana.
Okay. And how often does that happen?
Oh, I mean, we have about 2 vessels a day. So that's how often it happens.
So if we have 2 vessels a day, and you're saying each one of them is costing, or each container, the 20-foot containers, is costing about almost $200 each, because of the exchange that has to take place, where it has to go to the ports that can accommodate more bigger vessels, and then it has to be moved onto smaller vessels and then shipped back into Ghana. So that cost is almost about $200 per container, and each container is about 5,000. Each ship takes about 5,000 of these containers. So we're talking about almost how much? What are the figures here?
Let me clarify this. You see, a vessel moves from countries to different countries to other countries. So even though the vessel has a capacity of maybe 5,000 containers, it's not all those containers that would come to Ghana.
Right.
It will offload some, maybe 1,000 containers in this vessel, and then move to another port and all that. And this is the reason why you need to take advantage of the bigger vessels, because the bigger vessels carry containers for many countries. So they do not, it's not like when a vessel comes into Ghana, it would offload all the cargo into the port of Tema and then move straight to its destination or to wherever it came from. No, it will offload some, the Tema-bound cargo, move maybe to Abidjan or to Togo or to Nigeria to offload.
Right.
So it is not a situation. The situation is not such that you have all the vessels, just all the containers being offloaded, all the 5,000 containers being offloaded. We have a capacity, the annual capacity of about 1 million. For the port of Tema, the annual capacity is about 1 million containers. So that's how we should be looking at it. And within that context, you will realize that these vessels are smaller vessels within the port industry, because there are other vessels that carry 10, 14,000 containers. And those are the bigger vessels that we need to bring in here to save or to cut or to take cost out. Excellent.
So, I mean, the first question that we had from our members or the viewers is, I think we brushed a lot about it, but I'll still ask it because it's a question that came from the viewers. And it says, can you enlighten us about ports and harbours, the metrics by which vessels are measured, and what are fully functioning parts out to be delivering?
You know, the vessels are measured by basically their capacity. The capacity of a vessel depends on its draft, that is how deep it is below deck, and how high it is above deck, and how long it is. That would determine the capacity or how many containers. That's with special reference to containerized cargo. We have other vessels like car carriers, that is ro-ro vessels. We have bulk carriers that carry clinker. We have other carriers that carry
oil and gas,
rice, oil tankers, all those types of vessels. You know, but for purposes of this discussion, we could limit it to containerized cargo, because containerized cargo is actually what is making the difference in the shipping industry currently.
Okay, so the containerized cargo is what we're saying that for efficiency's sake, we need to expand so that we'll be able to accommodate much bigger ships.
Yes, and the current draft is 11.4 or 11.5 meters deep, but the bigger ships require 14 to 16 meters deep. 16 meters is best, and that is able to accommodate the world's biggest container vessels.
Excellent. So are we saying that we currently have dredged to that extent and we are able to accommodate them?
It's a project that is on course. The Tema Port Expansion Project is a phased project. It started about 2 years ago, and the first part of the first phase, we have phase 1A, which will be completed on the 29th of June this year, okay. 2019.
Right.
It would give us 700 meters of quay wall. Currently, as I indicated in my introduction, we have about 576 meters of quay wall, but phase 1A alone will give us 700 meters of quay wall. So that alone is able to, one, cover a longer area than we have. It will be able to accommodate the big vessels, the 16-meter draft vessels. Then phase 1B would be another 300 meters of quay wall to make it 1,000 meters for the whole of phase 1. And that phase 1B will be completed in 2020 June. Then phase 2 would be completed in June 2022. We expect that phase 1B would be completed even in the first quarter of 2020 and not by June 2020, looking at the progress of work. So we have not gone live yet. We are still building this facility to be able to accommodate the bigger vessels that would reduce the cost of doing business in Ghana.
Excellent. So basically, we will be on track in terms of technology-wise, in terms of capacity-wise, and in terms of being able to accommodate and save cost savings. The next question is, how can
you've raised one very important issue that you said technology-wise. We're using Navis 4. That is the terminal operation system. It is the best technology in the world. And that is what will be used in the Tema Port Expansion Project Go Live process. As we stand now, we are even using it for the current port, and this will be rolled over into the new port. So you have good technology.
What difference or what do we gain from this? Is it a software or is it hardware or is it a combination of both?
It's a software, but you need hardware to operate them. And it's what we call a terminal operating system. It links everything within the terminal and to external stakeholders, depending on what you want to share, because there are finance documents that you would not want to share, but they are all on this terminal operation system, from procurement, from stores management, through to equipment maintenance, through to the gate system, security at the gate. You look at when shipping lines are bringing in vessels and containers, pre-arrival notice will be sent by email or by this or through this terminal operating system. You know, we call them the electronic data interchange, the EDI. And then you know the loading plan. So the vessel planners would now be able to determine the number of equipment or the types of equipment to place on that particular vessel, depending on the loading plan. As I indicated earlier, every vessel has a loading plan because it's not all the containers that are bound for one particular country. So it is loaded in such a way that the Ghana-bound cargo is separated from maybe the Togo-bound cargo or Abidjan-bound cargo or Port Alexandra-bound cargo or any of those other ports. So you separate them, and depending on how it is loaded, you're able to deploy the maximum amount of waterfront equipment to be able to efficiently discharge the cargo.
Is this system linked to other countries, or is it in terms of, is it linked to the ships that are traveling in the different countries? Because for you to be able to monitor and also to time and also to calculate and all these different measures in place, how are you able to track? Is the system set up in such a way that is able to track the movements of the items that are being shipped?
That is also a different conversation, which we will come to at another time. That is during the course of this particular discussion. But okay. It is, you know, we have a community. The shipping industry is a community. You right. have the freight forwarders, you have the shipping lines who bring in the vessels, you have the terminal, you have the authorities, that's the tax, the customs division of the Ghana Revenue Authority, you have the security agencies, you have immigration and all. So this system is tied into the port community network. Okay. When vessels are coming into the country, what happens is that you are notified. The port authority will notify you. And through the system, you would get a prompt.
Okay, so we get to that question. I was going to ask you about a few questions leading as we were talking on technology, but just so that we don't miss any of the important, every single question is important. So just so that we don't miss any of the questions, sure. We'll go in the series in which we've hopefully got lined up so that we can hopefully, yeah. So basically, there's a lot of talk about corruption and bribery and all sorts of, you know, middlemen and all that in the ports in Ghana, for example. Can you tell us how can we stop bribery at the ports?
You know, in order to stop bribery, you need to know what brings about bribery, you know, and corruption. You find people trying to underdeclare the values of their product and then bribing officers who, you know, have certain discretionary powers, you know, within the system. So in order to stop bribery, put in efficient systems, one, to be able to cut out the human interface, paperless port system, invoicing. You make invoicing transparent so that when somebody brings in cargo, he can, with his bill of lading, be able to ascertain the amount of money that he has to pay for importation. The rent, that's the period that the cargo stays on a terminal, the importer would have to pay rent. He should be able to ascertain that for the first 7 days, there is no rent. After that, I'm supposed to pay this amount of rent. So that is clear. If that is clear, you are able to know that, look, when I log on to this portal, I'll, one, be able to know the duties. But that is one part, to cut out corruption by people who would inflate your shipping charges when you are not here. For those who want to declare cargo, we have a system that is coming in called the Cargo Tracking Note System, the CTN system. The Cargo Tracking Note System is a portal where you are importing from, the exporter from that country would actually put the values, the description of the cargo, the type of cargo, the category of cargo, all into the Cargo Tracking Note System, so that when you come in and you declare something different, you would be picked up by the system. How would the system pick you up? The system can pick you up, for example, when you go through the scanning process. Because if you declare that you're bringing in 100 boxes of wax print, and then it ends up being 100 boxes of whiskey, the system will pick you up. There are occasional sightings where, you know, the product decides that you cannot distinguish maybe used clothing from new clothing by scanning. You do occasional sighting and also post-clearance audits. So you are able to, when you take out the human discretionary element as much as possible, we are not saying that it should be zero, but you bring in technology to be able to take out the discretionary element, and then there will be a scientific basis for ascertaining whatever charges are within the port.
So is there a need for a third party, for example, an agent that would assist you, or, you know, would have to pay to be able to collect or your goods?
It's better to get a freight forwarder to assist you, because they are, you know, registered with the various entities within the port. The port is, for example, a limited, it's a security zone. Nobody can just walk in there. You need a pass. You need to know where you're going. There are man-machine interface restrictions, you know. So if you have every importer of every container coming into the port, it will just disorganize the port. And this is what informs the use or the need for freight forwarders within the port.
Okay, because I'm thinking about the cost of it, because that interface, adding a third party in there is where the discretion comes in terms of exchange of money. assuming you've traced or tracked, you know that you're paying, let's say, $100 for your shipment, and so you've budgeted yourself for $100, and then you end up in Ghana and you've gone to the ports and you're going to clear your things, happily going there with your $100, and then you end up finding out that, hey, you need a second person to, you know, go in for you. He or she is going to add their charges as well, and that's where the problem comes in. How can we address that?
You see, you look at, in every industry, there is you have, this is a service industry, and I understand from other ports, and it's a good practice in other ports that you can go clear by yourself. But I believe that in many ports around the world, you have service providers rendering freight forwarding activities. It helps the importer. Your time, you know, the freight forwarder is not only going to clear one container. He has maybe about 50 containers to clear in a day, or 70 containers to clear in a week, or 20 containers to clear in a week. So if the system works as we want it to work with these technology improvements, or the improvement of the port systems by the use of technology, the rate of the freight forwarder would be predetermined, because we have, you know, various charges within the port. You know that you use a freight forwarder and he's charging you 50 pesos, or just as an example. So you know that charge is predetermined. So if these charges are regulated and predetermined, you know the costs of doing business within the port, and you know how much you'll be paying for your cargo. You get onto the system, you know that, look, it costs me, the shipping line release will cost me this much. Freight forwarder will cost me this much. If I clear within the first 7 days of bringing my cargo into the port, there's no rent charges. If it's not beyond 21 days, there's no demurrage, for example. Then you would have predetermined the cost. The issue is not about people rendering services, but it is about corruption that you want to take out of the system. So if the charges are transparent and predetermined, I believe that people will be comfortable doing business within the ports of Tema or Ghana in general.
So I take it that currently all the charges are transparent. They are on the website or available where people would be able to see what their transactions will cost from the minute they ship to the minute that they will pick up from the ports.
Yeah, most of the charges are. Most of the charges are there. You know, you have the port tariffs, and the port tariffs are published per annum. And when you go to the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority's website, you find all the port tariffs listed. So you know exactly what you are being charged for. The only problem is that people do not take advantage of this system and look into it.
Excellent.
Or people who want to beat the system also try to circumvent processes by using corrupt means. And this is what we are trying to stop with the paperless port system: cargo tracking nodes, scanning devices, better, you know, CCTV coverage, and all that.
Excellent, excellent. I'm happy to hear that, because it looks like there's a lot of advancement going on. We need to, because at the end of the day, once we have this swift movement of goods and services, we'll be able to transact businesses, expand, redevelop, and basically put infrastructures through to make the country a lot better than it is.
Sure.
Now, the next question is number 3. We've heard of the $2 billion investment into the port. How will this position Tema vis-a-vis the Ivorian and Nigerian ports?
Good. The investment is actually $1.5 billion, as I said in the intro. And it's supposed to build, give us better capacity. When you have better capacity to be able to accommodate the big vessels, you're competing with countries like Cote d'Ivoire, like Abidjan. Cote d'Ivoire is really, really doing well in the port industry. And if we are able to, I think they have about 15 meters or 14 meters thereabout. If you are able to have 16-meter draft, you've beaten them to it already in draft. You're able to bring the super post Panamax handling equipment. We have the waterfront equipment. We're bringing in 7 super post Panamax ship-to-shore crane. What does this all mean? Long word, super post Panamax. What it means is that, you know, currently you have a vessel, the new generation vessels are about 22 to 23 containers wide. Do our ship-to-shore cranes have the capacity to service those vessels? No. The new generation vessels are about 10 containers above deck. Our ship-to-shore cranes that we have currently are unable to handle such vessels. We have a draft about 11.4, 11.5 meters deep. What it means is that we are unable to accommodate these vessels. So we are challenged by depth, we are challenged by width, we are challenged by height. Somebody will ask, why not just dredge and put on new equipment and you're good to go? No, our port was built over 50 years ago, and the infrastructure is not able to accommodate, you know, it's like building a foundation and then digging under the foundation to put up a building. It will collapse. To put up something on your building, it will collapse because the structural integrity cannot contain this. And that is why you're building a port, you're getting all these facilities in place, and you're able to compete. Now you're coming, the vessels are coming in directly. They will not go to Abidjan to lighten up. They can come straight to Ghana, depending on how you also now liaise with the shipping lines. It's a question of competition, you know, so you are able to at least position yourself to compete with them. You have Lagos, Apapa, all those big ports have come up. But, and I hear the Lekki port is also coming up. But they have congestion. They have congestion getting out of the port. So if you take advantage of this port facility and you're able to interconnect well, not just by road, but by rail, you know, you're positioning Ghana to be able to compete with Abidjan for the transshipment cargo and transit cargo. Because transit cargo is what goes to the landlocked countries. You drop them and they are moved by land, and transshipment is you drop the containers and smaller feeder vessels will pick them up to other countries.
Excellent. I have a question which you probably just covered, but we'll put it in a different context so that everybody can understand. Basically, the question, which is number 4, would have been, can Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire ports receive large vessels of up to 16 meters draft? But then you've just mentioned that it can only do up to about 14 or 15.
Sure.
And also, number 5, will our ports have its unique specialization, which differentiates it from the neighboring ports in terms of especially services it offers? Now, my question, I'll rephrase this so that it combines these two together. Are there other African countries who are currently our competitors in terms of what we are doing in Ghana?
Oh, yes. As I mentioned, you know, Nigeria is trying to build a new port in Lekki. You know, there are many other. Abidjan is also, you know, a very competitive port. Lome is a competitive port. They are competitors. So it is not just building the infrastructure. If you just build the infrastructure and you think that business will come just by building the infrastructure, you're wrong. You need to ensure that your services are efficient. You're able to attract you're able to give a good business case to the shipping lines. You're able to make sure that the shipping lines, you know, also connect other areas where they do not go. You advertise a port, the Tema Port in Dubai, you advertise in America, so that people are able to bring things through the Tema Port by showing them the cost-benefit advantages. For example, let me just give you a small
scenario.
Cost implication of shipping from Ghana to a place like Liberia, as against shipping from China to Liberia. And this is a real case. There's this plastic chair manufacturer in Ghana who wants to export to Liberia. Ask me how much that person will pay on freight. The person will pay about $3,000. Meanwhile, somebody from China sending the same plastic chairs, or maybe even same quality or lower quality, would actually ship for about between $750 and $1,000. Why? Because there's no direct link to Liberia. So if you're able to position yourself here, get the industries in Ghana to actually export to other African countries, you create business interlinkages between Ghana and those countries. And it is a win-win situation. In Ghana, we are currently talking about one district, one factory. You take advantage of the Port Expansion Project and make sure that the exports to other countries are made much cheaper. We have the free zones areas where people, invest in the free zones and want to export over 70%, about 70% of their cargo to outside countries. Is it cost efficient to export to other countries? With our current port system, we could have a better system and then improve upon the cost management of the industries within Ghana to exporting to other countries,
Excellent. That's one of the areas that we have been covering for a while, because we realized that the difficulties in doing business in Africa, especially doing business with other inter-African countries, is transportation. There's no infrastructure in place, and it's making it not very cost effective. For example, bringing food products, which are perishable goods, trying to transport them into different countries and selling them there. It's very difficult to transport them, although they are probably our neighbors. It's difficult. Why is that? Why is that such a big issue?
Why is transporting vegetables or perishable items to neighboring countries?
I just used that as an example, but in terms of any other goods and services between African countries, because I know that Lomé is right next to us, Nigeria is close by, Cote d'Ivoire is the same. And yet, transporting the example that you gave from China to Africa is cheaper than from...
Because there are no direct services. There are no direct services. And that is why you need to position the port of Tema to be able to render those direct services to neighboring ports by using feeder vessels. So when you have a hub, the bigger vessels come in, they deposit as many containers for other, West African countries in your port, because you have the capacity. You have a 127 hectare facility. You're able to store as many containers for transit, for transshipment. So you have the liberty to be able to get these feeder vessels to come in and also work to these smaller facilities. So you're creating business opportunities, not just for within the shipping industry. You are opening up your country and other countries to work together.
Exactly. It's quite important that we do that, because if we don't, of course, long term, it's not doing ourselves any good. Short term, we've been basically paying a lot, and due to that, it's deterring people from doing business within Africa. And we should be able to encourage our business leaders to be able to do that. And the only way we can do that is by building the infrastructure for them to be able to use. Now we go to question 6, which is, what would be our ship turnaround time, for example, the Panamax? Are Valimax ships larger than the Panamax? And what would it?
You know, I mean, all these are technologies that we could go on and on. You know, Panamax is related to the Panama Canal, all those things. But let's get to ship turnaround time. Ship turnaround time is dependent not only on the size of the vessel. It depends, one, on the anchorage time. That's the time that the ship spends waiting at the anchorage. If there's congestion within your port, then the ships will not be able to come alongside the quay and be served. So one, it depends on the anchorage time. Then when you bring the vessel alongside, yes, the bigger the vessel. So in Ghana, we are talking about the Panamax, the post-Panamax vessels. You're looking at a ship with about maybe 290 meters long, which we can accommodate now with the port expansion if we go live. And you're able to deploy. So, you know, it's a long vessel. You are able to deploy the ship to shore cranes in such a manner. Because if you have a small vessel and you have, let's say, even 20 ship to shore cranes, because of the limited length, maybe it's about 120 meters, you cannot deploy those equipment on the vessels. At least you can deploy maximum of 2. But if it's a long vessel, you can deploy 3 or 4. And that is what will determine the efficiency of offloading and unloading. You know, people use words, yes, nice, ship turnaround time. What is the real meaning of ship turnaround time? The ability of the ship to come and leave your country. How does the ship come and leave your country? Your ability, one, to receive it straight by, you know, using what we call the berthing window system. Instead of the port waiting at the anchorage, you have a service level agreement with the shipping line. The shipping line then says that, look, I want a berthing window. I've planned my shipments in such a way that I would have 1 service a week. So I would come every Thursday at 10 a.m. Make sure that your facility is able to receive me at 10 a.m. on every Thursday. So you have what we call, that's what we call the berthing window facility. You create a berthing window facility, you're able to plan and deploy equipment to be able to improve the turnaround time. You know, so it's not just about the vessel size. The vessel size is good anyway if you have the post-Panamax or Panamax vessels. But with this Valimax and all that, you know, it doesn't really, that's not the focus of the discussion. The discussion is to ensure that you're able to offload those vessels within time so that you do not have them waiting. A big ship, when a big ship is waiting, it's a lot of costs. It's a lot of cost for the shipping line. And in fact, at a point in time, you would not believe it, congestion charges were close to 200. The shipping line will charge congestion charges, but this has been taken out. It was about $200 per container, not per vessel. But because of the efficient way of doing business in the port, this thing has been taken out about 8, 9, 10 years ago. And we would want to continue to take out costs. And that is where we are moving to. Excellent.
I'm surprised about the congestion charge. That's another means of making money, by the way.
That was long ago, but that's been taken out because, you see, it's not a question of making money. It's a question of you bringing, let me put it in the layman's term. You have an articulated truck sitting, waiting to take out one box for your house. And it's waiting in your area just because there's traffic. He's saying that you're wasting my time. So he's going to, because the cost of that articulated truck waiting for a long time is a high overhead cost for the owner of the vehicle. In the same vein, the cost of that big ship or that ship sitting in and waiting just to come in because you are congested is feeding its crew, it is fueling the vessel, it is not able to go and do business elsewhere. So it has to make up for that kind of loss. So if you provide efficient services, you take out that element of cost.
That's true. It's exactly the same here as well, because I mean, in any business it will be, because it costs to keep these vessels and vehicles off the road. So
absolutely.
Talking about this expansion and the innovative ideas and trying to catch up with the world, basically, what would you say is the budget for the Tema Port and Harbour project? So
it's $1.5 billion, and as I said, there are four main contracts. You know, it's in my introduction I mentioned the marine works,
yeah,
then the land works, then the building works, and then the equipment. So you're looking at, first of all, creating the land. Reclamation is part of the marine works. Sheltering the harbor. You create a key, you create breakwater to break the water. You shelter the harbor. So, and then you dredge. So marine works comprises one, reclaiming the area, 127 hectares, dredging the access channel, building a breakwater, building a quay wall. Then the land works. You are putting in service lines, underground water systems, underground electricity systems, you know, drainage systems, fiber optics, everything. And then you cap it. You actually pave that whole area, you know, and then you build buildings. So these things put together, in addition to the equipment that you are deploying, you know, come up to that amount of money, $1.5 billion. But as I indicated, it's put into phases, and the different phases come with different gearing, you know, facilities.
And looking at this budget, how long do you reckon it would take to pay back, or roughly?
Oh, the concession is for 35 years.
Okay.
But the design criteria for building the harbor is 100 years. So what it means is that the harbor is built to last for 100 years. The concession is for 35 years. During the concession period, you would have to pay back some of the loans, or you have to pay back the loans. You would have to pay back the equity that the shareholders have put in, and every businessman wants some share of profit, so they would have to also make profit.
Of course.
And the good thing about this whole project is that Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority has 30% share in it. So during the 35 years, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority would still be having 30% of the profits when declared, and then for the rest of the 65 years after the project, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority would have it.
Would own it fully, is that what you're saying?
Yes, because it's a concession period of 35 years, unless they extend it.
Okay.
You operate, after that you transfer. You're building, you're operating and transferring, but it's a concession.
So we got to the next question. What are the sub-regional port objectives and possible business opportunities that may come out of this project?
Oh, yes, just like I gave you the simple, you know, every port is trying to become the first port of call, you know, so there's competition. And that is where you need to attract business with the shipping lines. And in attracting business with the shipping lines, you're looking at giving them an idea of business opportunities. Just like I told you about this plastic manufacturing, this is just one. And there are many, many, many more industries that can take advantage of this. Many more industries. So you position yourself to be able to service your industries, and then you position yourself to be able to service them efficiently, and you compete with other countries. You are looking at even, you know, you're looking at Mali, you're looking at Niger, you're looking at Burkina Faso. What are the business opportunities? We have a real reservation. And I know for a fact that this government, the current administration, the government of Ghana, I should put it, the state of Ghana, is, you know, interested in railway development. And so there's a quest to connect the Tema Harbor all through to Burkina Faso. This is a big business opportunity for all industries through to Burkina Faso. You connect to Mali, because Burkina Faso inbound bound cargo can also, then you can connect to Mali, you can connect to Niger. So you have these business opportunities that you can take advantage of in all these countries when you have a well-connected port or interconnected port, both by land, by rail, that's by road, by rail, and by sea.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, it seems a huge project. I was actually very interested in finding someone that can give us an update on the rail project that is actually taking place in Ghana. But I take it that's another session another day, so we'll go into depth on that.
Okay.
In terms of the paperless system, we're quite interested in that because we've had two questions about that. Because it's something quite new as well. Can you tell us, is the new paperless system working?
It is working. It is working. And when you talk about paperless systems, it's just, as I indicated, using technology to connect the various communities within the port industry.
Right.
We have the GCNet system. You need to be able to plug into the GCNet system, with your software, so that you're able to feed the system with information. You're able to feed Ghana Revenue Authority with information. When the shipping lines bring in the containers, you need to know that these are the numbers of containers offloaded. If you have the cargo tracking note, you're able to know that these are the contents. This is the revenue that is due the state, so that there are no revenue leakages. I think the paperless system, one, is to make the port efficient and to also prevent revenue leakages.
And is the paperless system making any difference to turnaround times as well on goods arriving?
Oh, yes. That's the dwell time. The dwell time for how long containers will stay in the port. Because you're able to move things around faster.
Okay. And do you believe that Ghana's government investment in the port and harbour makes a big difference to our economy in general?
I think what we've even said already answers this question.
I know.
And it is overflowed. It will certainly positively impact the economy of Ghana.
I mean, in terms
it will open up the country. What it is that if a place is not connected, it's not opened up to the rest of the world, then you have problems, making money from every aspect of, the businesses that go on in your country.
Yeah.
We have a virtual world now. We're sitting in Ghana talking to you. You're able to tell us what you do. We're able to tell you what we do. Why don't we connect the country in such a way that everybody sees the opportunities available here to take advantage of? The port system, well connected, would give us the opportunity to do just that, and will give every business entity a better exposure to be able to make better returns out of its business.
One of the key questions which has been asked is, how does our current ports levies or charges compared to our neighboring countries? What is the competitive edge that we have that makes us different?
Oh, I think our port levies are basically competitive. I think the only levies that I know the port is looking at, which is not very competitive in Ghana, is transshipment. And currently, there is a committee working, to actually change the transshipment regulations. So they would make a proposal to the authorities, when they are done, to be able to look at, boosting transshipment by changing the laws, because when these laws were made, the port did not have capacity as such. Transshipment was not the focus. But now that the port has capacity, transshipment has become the focus, and there's the need to take advantage of the opportunities and reduce costs. The other costs are very competitive, I must say. I
mean, if you talk about transshipment, for someone, a lay person that is not in the business industry, I'm a bit confused. I know transition. So if you can break that down for others to understand, please.
Let me break it down. transship. First, you have transit and transshipment. When you bring a vessel into Ghana, which is laden with cargo,
right,
and it is supposed to be carried by another vessel to another country, it is transit. Hey, it is transshipment.
Right.
It is transshipment.
So that's the whole issue that you've been talking about.
Exactly. So
in terms of the capacity that we'll be able to.
Exactly. So you're able to position your country. You review the transshipment rates, and then you're able to adequately, adequately compete with your neighboring ports.
All right. So because we had another question, which I think this will also answer, and the question was, we've had numerous complaints about this high cost of shipping a car, for example, from abroad to Ghana. Do you believe these are unfounded or legitimate? So I guess it falls under this transshipment issues.
No, shipping a car is totally, I'm sure they're talking about duties and all that. But yes, that's also another area. I am not very well versed in, we don't deal with ro-ro vessels and all that. And so that area is totally outside my scope. But talking from a layman or a port user's point of view, I think you can even check the duty on your port. I think there's a on your vehicle by texting to a particular code, so that one, the freight forwarder is not able to tell you that it is so and so amount. You just get the chassis number, you dial you text to that particular code, and it will come back with the costs, yes, the charges, the duties.
Okay.
A lot of people also leave their vehicles in the port for a long time, and it attracts demurrage and all sorts of costs. Yeah.
So that's that answers the other question number 17, because it's saying that, can a shipper check on the cost of shipping an item from abroad and the estimate time of arrival? So
yeah, of course. Yes. When you log on, in fact, onto these websites, it's there. The ETA, that's the estimated time of arrival of your vessel. You can easily track it.
Yeah. So that takes us to question 21, which is, strategic investment in Africa's ports can accelerate growth development. What's your take on this statement?
Oh, again, I think that the conversation that we've had has actually, dealt with this question adequately. A strategic development in ports would accelerate development, and it's an emphatic yes. Reason is that you have the ports being, carrying about, if you look at sea freight against, the quantum, most of these bulk things are not air freighted; they are sea freighted. And if you're dealing with construction, you're dealing with oil and gas, you're dealing with agriculture, you're dealing with industry, you need to open up the port, lessen the charges or reduce the charges by one, improving the economy of scale advantages that you can get out of these ports. And when you get, like I mentioned earlier, you can cut out costs by about $200 on a container. You do that, you open up the system, and you're able to accelerate growth. The plastic chair example I gave you, you can do that. How many people, sometimes you go to the Ada Road, you see tomatoes rotting by the roadside. They bring them to the roadside and they leave them, whilst people need them in other countries. So if you're able to open up the port, make it, cost effective to be able to compete with those products coming from the Far East or other countries, then you would boost business growth. Plastic chair example is a clear example here. That person manufactures at competitive rates, but he cannot transport to other countries. So there is the need to invest in ports strategically and open up Africa. Because Africa, what's the population of Nigeria? What's the population of Ghana? Put together, we can do business with ourselves, apart from also doing business with the outside world. Now we are concentrating a lot on doing business with the outside world, and we're leaving the interlinkages of Africa, without development. Let us open up the ports of Africa, not only Ghana, and then interlink and do business together with each other.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because at the end of the day, we've always had this issue where we're trying to transport goods and the infrastructure is not in place. So it's a good place to start and to invest in. In terms of the next question, which is Africa needs to take advantage of the economic potential of its port and shipping sector if it's to realize its growth ambition. A PwC report that came stated this. Of course, we've just discussed this, so I'm sure this again addresses the issue.
Absolutely. The PwC report, I've read it. It was actually talking about our project.
Yes.
And, it's a fantastic report that you should look at. It tells you about opportunities available to Ghana and the rest of Africa from projects like this, and we need to really take advantage of these projects to interlink the world and interconnect the world.
Exactly, because there was a while ago that we were speaking to Mr. Peter Niama from the World Bank, trying to find out why building businesses in other African countries can be some of the trade barriers into leading into building businesses in other African countries. And one of the key barriers that came in was the key infrastructure, road infrastructure, transport infrastructure, which was one big barrier. So we're happy that we're more or less going across that hurdle. The next question, which is quite an interesting one, it says, globally, ports are gateways for 80% of merchandise, trade by volume, and 70% by value. Can you explain this analogy?
I think I just gave you a gist of it.
Yeah.
Air freight, you medical supplies, things that need to reach fast. Many of these bulky cargo come through the port. Equipment, you cannot put a ship-to-shore crane on a plane. You cannot put a bulldozer. It's not worth putting a bulldozer on a plane. But you can put gold on a plane. Quick. So the worth of gold is lots more than a bulldozer. Look at the volume that the bulldozer. Look at the space that the bulldozer would.
Yeah, the size and weight.
Yeah. So basically, it is because of the weight and the volumes that you have. So the air freight industry, looks at these high value items rather than bulky items, which is why the ports render those services. So what it then means is that we even are much cheaper than the air freight. The freights in the port are cheaper than air freights.
Okay. So that brings us to our almost final question. Investment in ports and their related transport infrastructure to advance trade and promote overall economic development and growth is vital, particularly in emerging economies that are currently underserved by modern transportation facilities. How do we ensure this happens long term? You've just mentioned that the ports have been in existence for the last 15 years or so, and we're now expanding it. Yes, we've also known that these other road infrastructures and vehicles, shipments, and all that has also been installed for a while. What can we do to ensure that this stays long term?
Oh, long term, it's simple. That is why you have design criteria. When you're looking at design criteria for building a port, you're looking into the future. You're looking at what are the projections of shipping lines. Shipping lines will be building ships that may be for the next 30 years, I'm not sure shipping lines will be doing deeper than 16 meters draft. So you look at that. You look at the kinds of equipment that you bring in. And Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, I don't speak for them, though. I know that they have this master plan for the development of this whole port of Tema. And MPS is only taking the containerized cargo bit. So there is a plan by the Port Authority to have various other facilities within the port. We have a real reservation. And I know that the government is also, the state is also thinking about connecting the port to these other areas. So that is what makes it sustainable. You connect the port to other transport systems or networks, and you're able to look into the future. You know, you bring in modern equipment and you train and retrain people, and you re-equip. Look at the example of Meridian Port Services. We're able to utilize 2 berths, you know, to 92% capacity utilization before we started building the new port. We re-equipped it with modern equipment that the infrastructure could accommodate, you know, because you cannot put too heavy superstructure on a weak infrastructure, but we utilized it to as much as possible. So it is not just building the facility, but also how efficiently you utilize it and how you deploy modern technology. Technology, you know, is improving. We used to use N3, we are now at N4. That is the Navy's for the IT systems. So you keep training, retraining, and then improving, you know, yourself through re-equipment and aligning yourself with the global, you know, trends in the industry, and you will do well.
Excellent. Good. That means that we have to invest wisely and channel appropriately to ensure that financial sustainability and economic growth is maintained at all times. Now, yeah, investment is not always the next question, by the way. Investment is not always about building new ports or terminal investments spent on infrastructure without cognizance of the efficiency and the effectiveness of the performance of the port.
We've just discussed that. Yeah,
so I know we've just discussed that to get the desired results. In a layman's term, what's your opinion on that?
My opinion is that it is very true, and that we need to optimize the use of our ports and deploy technology. You know, and this is what happened with us. We optimize, you know, it's not just building something big and leaving it there to rot. Yeah. You make sure that the systems, you cut out corruption, and then people have confidence in it. Shipping lines need to have confidence in bringing their vessels to the port. So the security systems in the port, we have what we call the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code, ISPS code. You need to ensure that the vessels are safe. You do not have stowaways coming into vessels and creating problems. And if a stowaway gets into a vessel, what it then means is that a terrorist can enter into a vessel.
That's right.
So your security network really needs to be tight. Your efficiency, the vessel, you create avenues for them to come in, you create efficiency in the use of equipment, you have well-trained people, you have safety, you know, safety measures in place, because people do not want to associate themselves with unsafe practices. They don't want their vessels to come and sink. You have to have weigh bridges to ensure that containers are not overloaded. You know, if containers are overloaded, because we have to verify the gross mass of every container, weigh bridges and all that, so that you render efficient, sustainable services to the stakeholders without corruption, because, you know, now ethics and compliance is becoming one very important aspect of business, and people do not want to be associated with the wrong people, you know. So the ethics and compliance of a port is also important, which is the reason why the paperless port is a good thing to do. The paperless port will cut out non-compliances, will cut out corruption, would make everything open, would put things in the open for people who are transacting business within the port to have confidence that they are having real value for their money.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So just to give us a bit more confidence in what's happening in Ghana in our ports, can we say we've got the best ports in the whole of Africa?
We are getting there. And I can tell you that we, Meridian Port Services Limited, and Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority have won awards over the years as the most efficient port terminal within West and Central Africa. It's not just West Africa, West and Central Africa. And in positioning ourselves with a new expanded port, we hope to be the best in Africa.
So currently, who is the best in Africa? Which ports?
Oh, I think you have South Africa. I think it's Port Elizabeth or something, I should say. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Brown, for your time and for enlightening us. It's been a brilliant evening. We've enjoyed the conversation, as well as we've learned a lot. A lot of these, what you've just mentioned, is things that you hear about, you read about. But here on Business Links, you speak to the experts and they tell you exactly what is happening live from Ghana. And we thank all our viewers for your time as well. We hope you enjoyed the session. And also we hope that you have the information that you need to make the right business decisions. We will always be available at Business Links Africa. Yes, everybody is invited to join us. And the idea is to build up a business community where we can all exchange business ideas and also build a better Ghana. Thank you so much, Ebo. Also, my schoolmate, my year mate, we had a good time and at school. We stayed together until date. And yes, you're doing such a wonderful job trying to bring all these projects together. Is there anything that you want to tell us just in conclusion to this session?
I would say have confidence in the Ghana ports because it is changing for the better. A lot of people are skeptical, but let me give you a date, 29th June, come 29th June 2019, you would see the transformation in the port. Already the port is transforming, no doubt. But come 29 June and beyond, you will hear about the well-transformed Tema Harbour. And it's all with the support of the state, the various stakeholders in the various sectors of the state, the government, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Customs Division of Ghana Revenue Authority, Immigration. We're working around the clock to engage stakeholders, Importers and Exporters Association, everybody. We're engaging everybody within the port community, put them together, drivers, truckers, everybody, so that we have a seamless system. We would even have, what we call them, truck appointment system, the biometric access control systems, the radio frequency identification systems. There's a lot, the gate operation system. There's a lot of technology being deployed. And I can tell you that what is happening in the biggest or the best ports in Ghana or in the world would happen in Ghana. Thank you.
Excellent. Have you got any challenges that you're currently facing in terms of investment, business proposals, anything at all that you'd like to share, just to see if we can get people reaching out to you?
Oh, we always would have challenges, but we would resolve them. As doing business with authorities, you need to engage them and speak out to them, share information. It's all about sharing information. If you don't share information with your stakeholders, you have challenges. So our duty, our main challenge is the challenge of sharing information, which is why we love this platform, and it gives us the opportunity to share information. So you've resolved one of our biggest challenges of sharing information, and we thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Ebo. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you so much for your time as well. Thank you, our viewers. This is Business Links Africa. We talk about all issues that are affecting our daily lives. We would like to hear from you. We'd like you to be part of the team to help in any way, shape, or form. Thanks too much tonight. Everything went well. We had a few technical hiccups here and there, but it's all resolved. So hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks once again, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.